Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, we have a longtime listener and patron, Commissar Whiskers, coming in with actually a very unique prompt, mostly because it's sourced from our Discord. So before we get into that, let's go ahead and remind you that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow the instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be building your world. We've also got a YouTube now, so if you prefer to watch it or listen to the podcast on YouTube, go ahead and pop on over there, give it a like, comment, feed the algorithms, because we are now slaves to the master that is Google. I mean, we've been like that for a while, but anyway. We're still inexplicably over on Twitter at Let's Worldbuild. We are also on Discord, where conversations happen, where we can do world building, as we're going to get into from Commissar Whiskers today. So if you're interested in that, or just want to chat with us about world building or anything in particular, you can always go to our Discord channel. The link for that in the description. If you are feeling particularly generous, want to give us a nice tip, or just interested in our sweet, sweet patron-only content, we have a Patreon where you can go give us money and get cool stuff back in return, including patron-only episodes like the Aphid Lounge. That's only available to patrons. The Too Hot for Broadcast stuff that we just, for whatever reason, either it's too tangential or, dear God, maybe we just don't want to feed the algorithm the bad stuff, and all sorts of other goodies that I'm currently blanking on, but they exist. All that stuff you can find on our Patreon. So with all of that out of the way, let's dive right into the prompt. And again, this is an interesting one. So a big thank you to Commissar Whiskers. Big ol' smooch from me on this one. And the prompt itself is: the Elder Race, progenitors, whatever your world calls them, they were a super advanced race from the early days of the galaxy. They always leave behind powerful artifacts, and they're always long dead, except for that one wizard-looking guy the main characters meet. But what about their story? So the tenets, there are 4 tenets this time, and normally we'd be like, oh, I don't know about that one. But this is a group effort, so I'm actually pretty excited. So the first one is from Commissar Whiskers himself, who says, my own tenet is that the Big Bang was the culmination of a god war and scattered bits of gods throughout the stars. Early life in the universe tends to happen near god bits. I like god bits. Mm-hmm. So the others were crowdsourced and used with permission, though they have been paraphrased. From Honestly Kidding, we have the first intelligent life are descendants of god flora. Think guts, skin, organisms that live therein. The second one, this time around, the cycle will break. So bit of a meta comment there, Jay, but appreciate it nonetheless, because yeah, we do like our cyclical tales. That's true. And number 3, coming in from Narogi, with the universe full of god stuff, enough exposure to magical radiation allows magic. Enough focus on that god stuff can awaken that bit of god. So kind of horrifying, but I like it a lot. Now, Courtney, why don't you get us started today? Because I'm excited to dive right into this prompt.
Sure. My first one is that even though intelligent life descended from the god flora, those remnants of the gods are extremely dangerous to living creatures. If, for example, you were to fly a spaceship through a god-based nebula or walk through a field of god bits on the ground, you wouldn't be doing so good.
Interesting. So when you say that you wouldn't be doing so good, what are you picturing? What's the effect? Is it like radiation? Is it something else? What do you got here? What are you thinking?
I figured we could work on that and like kind of see what we want to go for, because it could be something that's like just straight out fatal. Or we could go for something that's more like a slow radiation, like Neurogi had implied, based on like how long you're actually in the zone for. So any number of things I think could be possible here.
Interesting. Well, unless Daniel wants to chime in here, I actually think that one of my tenets works pretty well when it comes to this segue, I would say.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. It makes me wonder why the gods are toxic in a sense to the god remnants are toxic to the world. And there's a number of possible answers to that, of course.
Yeah, I was like kind of I mean, I haven't decided on it fully, but thinking a bit about how that idea of like when you gaze upon like an elder god, you lose their
Yes.
mind sort of thing. So it could be something along those lines where it's
That'd
like
be fun.
too much
Yeah.
for you to comprehend and you just
Mhm.
break from that.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
that can definitely work.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Again, just going to pivot right here because I feel like I got to talk about my tenet because it works so well with what we're talking about. I wanted to say for my tenet that the gods that were blown apart in this god war are just straight up evil and want to destroy the universe. And so the war that actually sparked the creation of the universe, what the sentient beings of the universe are born from, is straight up evil. And it's a good thing that the God War happened because that's what I think of when I think of the God War is like, oh, it's a heroic thing where, like they're fighting against the no, these things, the gods themselves, straight up evil. And I thought it'd be kind of a fun subversion as well that sentient life comes not from the best aspects of godhood, but the most evil and parasitic and all that good stuff. Plus, when we add in Courtney's tenet, I feel like that works remarkably well because they're effectively like just chunks of pure evil just sitting out there in the universe,
Yeah, no, it totally fits with mine. Maybe that's what causes people to just lose their lives or lose their minds when they come across this stuff is like just being exposed to literal pure evil.
I'm picturing in a video game when you blow up something and there's literal bits everywhere.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. I'm also thinking about Event Horizon as well, by the way, where it's just like
I'm actually going to be watching that tonight.
Yeah.
Have you not seen Event Horizon?
Never.
Okay. No, I didn't realize you didn't see it. Oh.
No.
Oh. Okay, it is a mid movie that has a
let's not spoil
fantastic
it. I
premise.
forgot.
Yeah, no, so I won't say anything
I
else.
might have spoiled it. I'm glad I didn't say anything. I was about to say
I
something that would
agree.
spoil it.
No, I've definitely like seen references to it and I
Yeah.
know vaguely what happens, but yeah.
So in terms of this tenet, we're thinking like the classical conception of evil. So like something that's destructive and, fundamentally just malicious, plainly.
Malicious, selfish, they want to consume the universe and something has stopped them. Yes.
And there's a sense of intelligence rather than animalistic intelligence.
Intent. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a great bit from Calamity, which is a live play with Brennan Lee Mulligan as the DM. And he has this bit where they effectively meet Asmodeus, like the devil. And it's not enough that, like this thing is evil. It's that he wants you to know that it hates you so much. It hates your existence, your being, your existence is an affront to it as a devil, as a god.
Kind of like a cosmic evil that has fundamental qualities of what we think of as evil. Okay.
But it's also personal. I want to make sure that that is also in there too, but yeah, effectively that's what we're going for.
I'm wondering then, and I don't know if either of you have tenets around this. I don't actually, but based on the tenet from Jay, this time around the cycle will break. I wonder if like life forms because these gods have destroyed themselves and eventually those gods reform and again destroy themselves and so on and so forth.
Oh, that's really good actually.
My reaction to that part of his tenet is, of course, to try and subvert it as much as possible.
Yeah.
Only because,
it is, Daniel.
Well, because our one of our pet peeves, always mine, is cycles and universal cycles. Because I feel like that's come up a lot. So the idea of like, oh, the Big Bang is just a thing that happens over and over again and just repeats. Like it gets really tiresome. So I'm wondering, is there something we can do with it that's very weird? So like that does something strange to the idea of a cycle. And what you're saying would make sense. It would just solve it.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, could there be something that takes cycle to mean something else, as opposed to what we're going to think it means?
I have to admit, I'm very attracted to the idea of like the gods reforming themselves, like as part of a cycle. So like that is attractive in breaking that, like baby. I'm like, no, the gods are just dead. They're angry about it, but they're dead. Like that is pretty attractive to me. But I'm also open for counter arguments, Daniel. Like I like the idea of like warping the cycle, like making sure that a cycle does not exist. But when you say weird, what are you looking for here exactly? What are we trying to do?
I think if we say that the events of the narrative aren't going to have anything to do with a cycle, that might solve it. You know what I mean? So like if we say like in the past, this has happened a bunch of times and now they're broken apart, right? And so the story is not going to talk about them reforming again and then us defeating that again, because that's just repeating the cycle. That's fine. But you can have a cycle, I think, in the back burner as part of the narrative of history, right? I just don't want the narrative to repeat that because we've done things like that before.
Okay.
Well, if that's the case, can't we just say like this is the beginning of a new age? Like that's and like something that has never happened before. Actually, we might even be able to get kind of meta with it and be like, they know that this cycle has happened over and over again, and this is the first time that it hasn't happened. And they're like, oh, this is so outside of what we're used to that it's almost uncomfortable, you know?
Or even to say like the Big Bang was the event that was different and it's what shattered them, it breaks the cycle. And so in the past, maybe they had been broken many times and reformed, but there weren't an endless progression of Big Bangs in the past. This Big Bang was important, and the creation of life is the result of breaking them, and that's not undoable, at least as far as we can understand so far.
Yeah. So like the difference between like a hand-to-hand combat in the past versus like they just dropped a fucking nuke on themselves for this Big Bang.
Exactly. Yeah. That would be more interesting, I think, because now we know we're not going to repeat that structure.
Well, could we also say that this is the first time that evil has lost?
Yeah, or that, you know.
Yeah, because I mean, the fact that I have evil gods as the losers, that might not be the case, you know. It might just be like, oh shit, wait, the outcome of the war has changed, like fundamentally. That might be kind of interesting to explore as well.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it'll come up later. Maybe we can talk about it. Actually, Daniel, maybe one of your tenets can guide our hips in the right direction.
Well, I have one that gives some rules to the gods. The other one could help with this, so I'll go with the one that could help with this. I was looking at the progenitors, which seem to be, they don't necessarily have to be the gods. They seem to be, they can be separate, completely separate. So my tenet says that the progenitors come from a time in the past when the gods were intact, and they're opposed to them philosophically.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so now what we're doing, so what I hear from that, Daniel, is the god war is not necessarily between the gods themselves, but progenitor race and the gods.
Or, I mean, given that they're evil, like they could be between whatever proto-life existed out there in the time before, you know? So like, I could see it being between these giant cosmic entities and other races, as well as other giant cosmic entities, because they're evil, so they're probably turn against each other, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I just find something kind of appealing about like the progenitor races that literally topple the gods. Like that to me is like, wait, that sounds like a really fun story actually, because it's like we didn't expect to win. What the fuck do we do now? You know, like that to me sounds like kind of cool. I'm like, let's do that. Can we do that? Can we do something like that maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I see them as fighting.
It does sound cool, yeah. Especially because like in the prompt, they're described as super advanced. So like maybe they did eventually develop a weapon that could kill a god and explode it across the universe.
Yeah, exactly. And then somehow make life from that. And that's why they're progenitor races, because they're literally creating life as well.
Yeah, so it's almost like the races that exist didn't evolve from that progenitor race, but that progenitor race just made it possible for life to happen.
Yeah, they're the reason for life existing, which like makes them gods in their own right, kind of, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, interesting. I like it.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. I mean, like, bam, cycle broken, right? We take care of today's prompt right there. We're not doing the cycle anymore because this has never happened, or it has not happened at all in the timeline. That's dope. Yeah. Oh boy. All right. Okay. So Courtney, wing us back around. What is your second tenet that you're working with?
My second one is that there is a massive celestial serpent that roams through the universe in search of god remnants to eat.
Oh,
okay.
Weird.
So there's some kid on his phone playing Snake right now.
Yeah.
there's a cosmic child playing Snake.
Very Raised by Wolves, a series that I will defend, even though it's now dead.
Oh, is it Raised by Wolves?
Yes, very much.
Yeah. Oh, see, I'm thinking like Norse mythology, like Jormungandr, the world serpent. You know, that's where my brain goes. Yeah.
Which is also, I'm sure, inspiration they pulled upon, you know.
Oh, probably. Yeah. You know, I bet that like Raised by Wolves is probably just like the Nordic mythology retold with a sci-fi twist. Like, so that tree that the person gets turned into is just Yggdrasil or something nonsensical like that. So
they pull from, it seems like antiquities, Christianity, like Sol Invictus sort of stuff.
But
of course, that also borrows from all the other religions.
Oh yeah,
there you go.
The bleed between Abrahamic religions is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh yeah, we're just gonna borrow from like the Bhagavad Gita, but like not tell anyone about it. You know what I mean? Like that to me has always been really interesting. But okay, we're getting off topic here a little bit.
But the steak makes me think that perhaps it was the weapon of the progenitors then, because if it's eating god bits, it might still be.
Yeah, because it's attracted to them.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. If this is their like super advanced weapon that they unleashed upon the gods.
Yeah, and it's still it's a danger because it's still doing the work even though it's defeated the gods.
And if these worlds with life on them have god bits, like it's eventually going to show up and be like, "Oh, this looks like a good snack."
Yes. Oh, I can see a story forming, like seeking out the progenitors to understand the snake, all that.
Yeah.
It's a Galactus entity. Yeah, absolutely.
It also, I like that it sets the gods a step removed. So we're not dealing with that anymore. Now we're dealing with a more, not mundane, but a smaller, more conceivable threat.
Yeah, it is easier to imagine. I mean, obviously a cosmic serpent is still pretty big, but like in the grand scheme of things, it would be tough if we had to build out like a pantheon of gods that are already dead.
Okay, wait, hold on. I'm thinking now of Nidhogg. You remember Nidhogg, right? Me? Yeah, exactly. I'm like, wait a minute, that's basically what it is now, isn't it? Oh man, Daniel, did you ever play Nidhogg with us?
I
don't know what that is. I know the name is familiar because it sounds like something from Norse mythology.
It is.
Okay.
Nidhogg is an indie video game it looks very simple. It's basically you're fighting against an opponent, and at the end, if you win, you are honored by being consumed by Nidhogg, the great serpent.
It's stupidly fun, especially as a party game. Like, oh my god, it's ridiculous. It is perfect for hype moments if you're like with friends and stuff like that. So wait a minute, hold on. Instead of if we want to do this, right, maybe we can just say that like being consumed by the world serpent is an honor, or like is like not necessarily something to be worried or afraid of.
So like you get like launched out into space with a bunch of like god stuff around you, and you're just like hoping to be eaten by the.
I mean, like, well, no, because it's like I'm thinking that like being consumed by the world serpent is a representation of like apotheosis or like ascension in some way, right? And it's not like you become a god, it's more like you meld with the universe or like the stuff of creation in and of itself, which is kind of neat, I think. But
that might be interesting for a sect that believes that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, because I could see that sect believing that fully and them actually being villains in the sense that they don't realize that, like, so for example, they want to offer up whole worlds to this thing to create apotheosis for everyone on it.
And
then the other people are seeking out the progenitors and realizing, oh, this was a weapon and it's full of the bits that make people turn evil because it's consumed them. And they're like, fuck, this is terrible. We've got to stop them. But the zealots believe it and genuinely, like they think it's a good thing.
Yeah, they're like heralds of it coming. So like they're basically out there with like a stick and a carrot, like, like guiding the world serpent.
I love the idea of them offering up worlds for this thing. They explore around and they're basically like imperialists. They just show up in some like less advanced world or less cruel worlds and are like, hey guys, nice to meet you. Good that you saved all this god stuff for us. In a few days, you're all going to be consumed in the fires of the world serpent.
Good news, everyone. Like, have you heard? And by the way, normally it would be like, oh, they're hypocrites because they've saved their own world by diverting this thing. I like to imagine that they're just an armada that they have in fact committed to the bit. And they've already sacrificed their world.
Yeah, that's cool.
They are true believers in this world serpent thing.
It could also be like a form of them feeling like a sense of control over this thing if they know or they think they know how to guide it and how to like honor it, but in reality it's this fucking cosmic being that is just hungry.
Okay. Can we talk about maybe like the consequences of the cycle being broken here? Because it's like maybe this world relies on the gods to start the world over once it ends. But what happens now is that entropy, like the eventual heat death of the universe exists, and it is being like sped up by the world serpent or something like that. Like that's kind of an interesting take on it as well.
I mean, at a minimum, the threat it poses is that I imagine, despite the insanity or whatever is caused, magical insanity, or I don't know what the effect is of interacting with the god bits, is I'm sure that civilizations have turned it into something useful, because it seems to be like, if it's like magic, that means it's a sufficiently advanced technology, right? So I would assume then it poses a threat to eliminating that power by consuming all the bits and all the people who have those powers. In a way, that's a form of entropy, because you're reducing, like metaphorically speaking, you're reducing like the order in the universe, like that's created by having these powers.
Yeah. I'm wondering now too, like, are stars the god stuff in its purest form? And that's what it's really eating?
Oh, that's
so
kind of
it's like
interesting.
snuffing out the light. And I mean, I'm sure there are worlds too where there's like a higher concentration that it'll gobble up to, but like,
are the bits in those stars?
Yeah, like if it eats the star and then you're sitting on a planet nearby in that solar system and you're like, ah, shit, like we don't have a sun anymore.
That's cool, because you can see the snake like diving into the star and destroys the whole star system.
Yeah.
I could imagine the bits being like embedded in the star, and that so if you're like a worshiper or a magician or whatever they're going to call them, you'd have to go to that star and like study near it. It's probably like stations built near it to learn. It also reminds me of the Dying Earth series that D&D's Magic is based on. What's his name?
Jack Vance.
Jack Vance, yeah. Because in Jack Vance, like the Ion Stones, they're forged in stars, and the little devils that live in them that give spells to wizards like come from that star stuff, which is kind of neat.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I like that. Interesting.
Cool.
So like you need that resource to be able to use magic, and once your sun goes out, maybe that's like kind of it for your world. Like you don't have magic anymore unless there's a really big concentration on your
Probably
Earth.
dead too.
Dead for other reasons. Yeah.
It also would mean too that, because we said that the life comes from the god bits, so it makes me think then some of certain stars have this. It explains actually the origin of life in a way that makes scientific sense too. The certain stars, it's not because they're in a Goldilocks zone. It's because the star stuff is in the star and it's radiating the energy that gives life. So that's why life only occurs in certain places.
That's cool. So it's like a different class of star, in addition to the ones that we already have.
We can also do like a Superman thing where it's like, oh, under the light of a red sun, like you're empowered by certain things, and it's just like it just differs between, like, because I imagine that there's like purple suns and green suns and blue suns out there, stuff like that.
Which is true.
Yeah,
true.
Are there purple suns?
Purple. There's deep blue. There's blue stars. I have to check purple. I don't know. Let me see.
Well, Daniel, you don't need to check because they exist in our world. So
I'm trying to know if it's a real thing. Purple. I don't think so. Purple.
I don't think so. No.
Let's see. Oh, the violet stars. Yes, there are.
No.
Oh, neat.
Okay.
Okay. So we've got a really interesting set of tenets thus far. One thing though, and I wanted to clarify before I go into my second tenet, but the last line of the actual prompt is, but what about their story? I am under the assumption that our narrative focuses on the progenitor race, the elder race, as Commissar Whiskers calls it.
Yeah.
Are we under that assumption as well?
No, that's a good thing to loop back to, because I had kind of forgotten about that part of the prompts, but that is good to keep in mind. Yeah.
Right, because like my second prompt is that the progenitor races have splintered off and have like effectively become hermetic, and like there was a conflict that happened after the God War that has caused them to like retreat and retract from society, right? And that's kind of what I'm interested in exploring, is that like, oh, it's their story. So what are they doing now? Like, why have they gone off? And like, why have they effectively left these races made out of flora and fauna of the guts and stuff like that to kind of flourish on their own,
So are we talking about the period like after the war, but before this race totally dies off?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I think what I'm trying to do is explain why they're not actively like cultivating races and like being gods on these planets themselves, you know?
Yeah, I'm just referring to the part in the prompt that says they're always long dead, except for one
Mm.
guy.
Right, but like I think what I interpreted from but what about their story? Like I'm interested
Right,
in
right.
like that part.
I'm just saying, like in the timeline where it is. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I like the idea that if the answer to what about their story is why, even though they're gone now, they're long dead, why did that happen, right? If they had such
Mhm.
power in the
Right.
beginning. So I guess the question is like, and I like the idea that there was a conflict among them, maybe
Yeah.
Yeah.
some philosophical disposition that led them to separate and then like withdraw. So I like that
Mhm.
also could be a
Mm,
question answered by the implementation of the world building. So if you're
yeah.
writing the novel or you're creating the RPG, that might be the question that work answers, you know, and that the
Mhm.
players, because it seems so far that the protagonist or the players are trying to figure out how to deal with the serpent and the zealous worshippers of it, right? Who are sacrificing worlds to it, at least in one run
Mhm.
of the story. And
Mhm.
one way to figure out that is to figure out where the progenitors are. And then to
Mm,
get to the progenitors, you have to understand what happened to them and what they
Yeah.
care about,
right.
you know?
Yeah. I think that's a really great point, Daniel. Like, as long as the focus is the story of the progenitors, like let's find
Mhm.
out what happened to them. I think
Yeah.
that I'm actually really okay with that. You know, like
Yeah.
and oh man, my brain just going on. It's on fire right now. So because I'm thinking a couple of things. One, we can loop in Courtney's world serpent, and like that's like the
Mhm.
origin point of their conflict, right? Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
didn't believe that the world serpent was the correct choice to like defeat the gods, right? Like that's an easy one. But then also, I'm like, oh, well, you know, if we want to focus the narrative around the progenitor's story, how do we involve them? Like, I'm thinking that if we involve Ioun stones or something like that, then there's fragments of their personalities that are
Mhm.
effectively being like reborn or at least manifest in part in like this new race of people, you know? So it's like, oh, you're able to experience the progenitor's story, but only if you possess, you know, like some aspect of them in some
Mhm.
way, you know what I mean?
Interesting. This is reminding me a ton of the Outer Wilds, which I still need to actually go back to and replay and beat.
I still need to play that. I played
Yeah.
like an hour of it. I'm like, damn, this game is awesome, and then just never touched it again.
Yeah, yeah. It's awesome, but also like such existential dread.
I mean, yeah, when you're when like one of my first things that I did was reenacting the scariest scene in 2001 A Space Odyssey, like just spinning into the infinite abyss
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
space. Like, yeah, no, it causes a crisis a little bit.
A
Yeah,
little bit, a little bit.
just a little bit.
But yeah, I like the idea that the main characters are like hunting down clues for this ancient, long dead civilization and like
Mhm.
finding out things about them through these various means, whether it's like interacting with records that they've kept or like
Mhm.
holograms or
Meeting them,
yeah,
right?
or like some sort of like ghost like apparitions or who
Sure.
knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of those things sound awesome. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think the depiction of them, or it really depends on what you want to do in your setting, right? But it should be something I think glorious or what's the word, like awesome in a traditional sense.
Mhm.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
if we're talking about this from a magical, a divine perspective, like the gods are the
Mhm.
gods, but then these things are the closest equivalent to that, so like angels. That's one
Mhm.
way to go about it. If you're doing a
Mhm.
strict sci-fi, you might take a Deep Space Nine approach, and so we know what kind of aliens these are, but they do have a stranger disposition,
Mhm.
like a higher dimensional
Mhm.
one, for example.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking that like whatever technology or whatever like magic that they use, it makes them look and feel like completely alien compared to one another
Mhm.
even. So for some reason I'm thinking of Stargate where it's like the ancient gods just had like snakehead helmets and like Anubis helmets and shit like that. Do y'all remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, it's not like that they were Jackalmen, it's that they had the
Mhm.
technology that made them look that way, right? And I think
Right.
that that's a plausible way that we can kind of make them feel really different and alien from one another if we just varied up based on like what they wear and what kind of powers that they might have, you know?
Mhm, mhm. 'Cause, yeah, you were talking about splitting off into different groups, so I imagine there was some, like,
Mm,
divergence in appearance from that point, depending on how long they
yeah,
survived.
yeah. Yeah. Well, let's move on because Daniel, you still have your second tenet, sir. So let's hear it. What do you got for us?
Well, my tenet is designed to ground us in material reality and science fiction. So the gods seem divine because they're governed by a localized physics that originates in their pre-Big Bang space, where they come from. And the same is true of their guts. So the effect of this being that the closer you get to them, the weirder the space surrounding them becomes, which is perceived to be magical. And so the use of their power, quote unquote, is almost like creating your own little reality bubble that uses its own physics. And so
that's really cool.
Really what's happening. Yeah.
You're right, Courtney. I'm definitely getting Outer Wilds vibes now, just because, like, oh yeah, you go to that place and the gravity is insanely different compared to like other planets and stuff like that. So yeah, that's really cool, dude. So when you say reality bubble, can you say a little bit more about that?
So our universe is its own reality bubble where no matter where you are in the universe, the rules are the same. So, and I'm also thinking a little bit of Ravenloft, incidentally. So what I mean by reality bubble is, like where the star, which, doesn't jive with our understanding of the actual stars, but that would mean that in the star, there are regions that don't follow the same rules because that's where the little god bits are embedded.
Gotcha.
And the possession, which I guess we could go with, like the Jack Vance approach to magic in that sense. The possession of these things then means that around you, you're able to change the rules,
Okay, so does that mean that the world serpent in its wake is causing this, like, it is a massive reality warping?
Oh, yeah.
It is like a tidal wave of reality.
Yeah, because it's got tons of guts in it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like the rules constantly change and are at odds with one another. So it's like just being in this thing's presence, it's like nigh impossible to even look at from mortal eyes. And then on top of that, it's like, oh boy, we've got to contend with all these different varying realities and rules and physics. Yeah, that sounds dope as fuck.
That is very cool.
So instead of, your traditional magicians, you've got a bunch of people in a research station next to the star or even a black hole or whatever, they're trying to figure out, okay, what are the generalized rules for this particular, stone or chunk of the god? That way we can replicate and use them and understand them,
Yeah.
Man, just like the exploration bit is really fascinating too, because now whenever you go from star system to star system, you're forced to contend with new rules. And like just the learning curve alone is like kind of a fun thing that you can introduce into, if we're looking at this from like a game perspective, but there's so much that you can do with that. That's really dope.
Yeah, and I like that it emphasizes like the idea of exploration and research. And I know we're not doing the main quest until next episode, but there's still the idea of like we could be following a team of researchers who are maybe tracking the serpent and trying to figure out where it's going and how to stop it. And, also researching all the progenitor race stuff that we talked about.
Yeah, I would like to contend a title for the episode, which would be In the Wake of the Cosmic Serpent, just because like if you're just following this thing, like studying the effects of what it leaves in its wake is going to be a fascinating, like kind of scientific expedition.
Yeah.
Right?
I was thinking Suneater.
Oh,
sure. Let's go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
In the Wake of the Suneater.
Yeah, let's do that. That sounds dope.
Novel could be The Serpent's Wake, and it seems so misleading because like reading it, I'm like, oh, a serpent, what does that mean? It's a metaphorical, and then there's like a giant ash literal serpent,
There's a little giant snake eating signs.
Well, I guess this author wasn't playing.
Yeah, and they're like, well, it's a bit on the nose, isn't it?
No,
like, fuck you. Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. I love that. Okay. So are we ready to do a recap here? Because it sounds like we're kind of there.
Yeah.
Courtney, you started us off today. What was your first tenet?
Yep, that was that even though life descended from the god bits, those remnants are extremely dangerous to life itself. And, flying through a god bit nebula or walking through a field of it isn't going to end well for you. And we had talked about potential effects of that, like losing your mind or your body deteriorates or you just die instantly, but we didn't quite decide what exactly. And maybe it is something that it depends on the bits themselves, since it seems like each area could have like a different effect on you. So it's unpredictable.
It sounds like the rules of physics changing would have extremely deteriorating effect
Yep.
on you.
Yeah.
Daniel,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we're on the same page because I had the same exact idea where it's like whatever rule they break suddenly is affected by the human body, and that's not good.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't want to be breaking the rules.
The rules of physics are very tightly knit. Like, you change any of them and things go drastically wrong.
Exactly. Our bodies are used to being a certain way, and when you start changing things, it's not good. It's very not good.
Yeah. To reference the topical Titan sub recently,
Oh,
right.
the idea of like if you're stumbling across like some god stuff and suddenly you're exposed to like 500 atmospheres worth of pressure and your body just implodes.
Yeah.
Gravity is a hell of a mistress. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I know that's separate, but like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm just thinking about like all of a sudden, like your blood is too heavy to travel or something like that. Like, oh man, all the fun things that we can do with reality warping that can fuck humans up is really great.
Well, I mean, if any of the fundamental forces change, like our atoms fall apart. Like, that's how bad.
Yeah. Oh man. All of a sudden, like the laws of physics are like tweaked slightly and bam, shit goes wild. Oh, that's so fun. Yeah.
Yeah. That also makes like space travel so insanely dangerous. Like
super dangerous. Holy shit.
If you're flying along and you're in what's supposed to be a safe zone and maybe like a meteor or a comet comes out of nowhere and it's like, oh fuck, what if this has God stuff in it? We are going to be obliterated.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. What a terrifying experience. That's awesome. Yeah.
You also then could have magic items, quote unquote. Like, for example, I could see the research facilities having banded together across various worlds to create, say, containment fields that allow you to transport God chunks by further localizing the physics, like determining where the boundary is of its radiation of the reality bubble and building a sphere around it so you can safely transport them, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
that's dope. That. I like that a lot. Yeah. Oh boy, this is exciting. I'm really digging this one. This is a great group effort. My first tenet was the gods that are referenced in the God War are straight up evil and they wanted to consume and destroy the universe. And that has worked out very well. We've got like the progenitor war now that is also the God War. Like I'm really happy with that has turned out as well. So yeah, I'm satisfied with that tenet.
Yeah, I think it works well and makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Daniel, what was your first tenet? Hit us with that reminder.
The progenitors come from the part in the past when the gods were intact and are opposed to them.
Yeah, again, we blended all that together beautifully. It works out. Yep. We've got like all that good stuff. Cool. Okay. Courtney, your second tenet.
That was that there's a massive cosmic serpent flying around the universe eating god remnants.
Considering that is like central to the premise, I think that we've done that pretty well. Yeah.
I think so too. Yeah.
So my second tenet was there was a conflict between the progenitor races that happened that has split them off to be aloof and mysterious to the other races. But subtitle, subtweet, subquote, that the story should very much be about the progenitor race, or at least understanding the progenitor race in a more complete way. Yeah. Again, I'm feeling happy about that. I feel like we've justified a lot of that stuff. A lot of really interesting lore has happened surrounding that. So that's dope. So Daniel, finish us off here. What is your second tenet, sir?
This is that the god bits have localized physics that is in line with where they came from, but not ours.
Absolutely. And I'm feeling very satisfied with that as well.
Yeah, same.
Excellent. All right. So we've got our recap. Do we have any questions that we need answered before we roll our twist?
I am curious about this one wizard-looking guy that the main characters will meet.
Yeah. I was picturing in my head too, like trying to find like a living progenitor might be a matter of like, oh, maybe you go to this world and there's like a tomb but it's protected by all this AI technology and there's an adventure to like get to the tomb to awaken the holograph of this person. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff like that because the progenitor's knowledge is so important,
So I'm gonna do something I think is a really cool idea. I like the idea that you get to this progenitor's tomb, you open it up, and the progenitor's still there alive. He's just been like, I've done this to protect you all from me, or like he's doing it as penance or something like that. You know, like
Yeah, that could be cool too. Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe he's like the engineer behind the Suneater serpent.
Oh,
that would be really good. Yeah, because you have to find out why that progenitor. That's a good reason why.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, alternatively, he could be there imprisoned by other progenitors. Like he cannot
Yeah.
escape
created
again.
it. Yeah, for having created
Yeah.
it.
Like he's basically like
Exactly.
a major war criminal for doing
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Right.
Oh, now I'm getting like Ridley Scott vibes. Sorry.
Well, more Ridley Scott vibes.
Yeah.
Wait, which kind of Ridley Scott vibes?
Like engineer Ridley Scott, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Guys, I love Prometheus. I don't care.
Yeah, I didn't mind it. I didn't hate it
Yeah.
as an alien movie.
There's definitely some like, okay, there's things that I like that are really bad about it that I just can't help but like, and like some of them
dumb
are
all the
nitpicks.
characters are. How dumb
Yeah.
they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's
All the
exactly
characters
it.
are
It's
really
like,
dumb.
how are you? Yeah, like, okay, with the original aliens, like, okay, you're a bunch of like space miners. You're not supposed to be
These
the
are
smartest
dummies.
people out there. Yeah, there's like, I'm gonna take my helmet off and poke my head as
I'm gonna
close to
lick
this
this
alien.
alien's head because that's
I
the best way to
know.
learn about it.
It's so
I'm just gonna
dumb.
snuggle it and then just like,
Yeah.
oh my god, it's like gonna put my pants down and just attach it to myself.
I literally was gonna
My
say
God,
that. I'm like,
horrible.
what happens if I stick my dick in this alien? Let's
God.
find out. Like,
It's no morons.
that to me is like really like offensive, like how dumb they are. That's the thing that is difficult for me to get around because I like believable characters and those are not believable characters.
Yes, it's so true.
Okay. We're going. You can tell we're excited about the prompt, right? Like that's what I love about this.
We're talking about the progenitor potentially having been the engineer of the snake, and he's in prison because what the fuck? Why did you create this?
Because he's a monstrous war criminal.
He's a monstrous war criminal from a certain
exactly.
point of view.
Yes.
Yeah.
Alleged
fuck
war
off.
criminal.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to believe he's like an Oppenheimer, you know?
Okay, I'm actually listening to a podcast series on Oppenheimer right now, and I'm gonna get back to you about that.
I want to see that movie.
I'm not gonna watch it.
I'm interested.
But I'm vaguely interested.
Mainly because of the actor. I love that actor.
Yeah,
Cillian Murphy's awesome.
He's great.
Cillian Murphy is attractive and he's a good actor. Yes. Fair enough. Okay, we got to move on. we got to roll this twist rather than talk about how hot Cillian Murphy is.
That'll be a patron episode.
How hot Cillian Murphy?
How hot is Cillian Murphy?
Yeah, an entire aphid lounge of like these are the most attractive actors. Like
no, it's just about Cillian
just
Murphy.
an hour long chat about him.
Yeah, I really only know him from like Batman and the Peaky Blinders.
28
I don't
Days
think
Later.
28 Days Later.
My favorite.
Oh yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, I forgot he was in that. Yeah, that's good. That's a good movie. That's one. That's
my
probably
favorite zombie movie of all time.
I was gonna say that's probably the best zombie movie of all time. It's not the most influential, but it's probably the best. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. All right, let's roll this twist because we're clearly going a little off the rails here.
And the twist is Cillian Murphy.
Oh my God! Wait, hold on. I'm going to add that to the twist list right now. I don't know what it means, but it's in there. There we go. Doing it live on the podcast. All right, new twist: Cillian Murphy. That's it. That's the only thing about the twist. All right, so our twist this time is. There's an unreliable main character / narrator. So that's a fun one. I'm excited to see what we do with that for sure. And a big thank you to Commissar Whiskers for the prompt. And remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow the instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be building your world. If you want to go subscribe to us on YouTube to help the algorithm and help find more listeners for us, or just link it. Actually, that might be easier. If you're just like, hey, I like this podcast, listen to this episode on YouTube. You can do that now. That's available. Just sharing the podcast is a great way for us to be incredibly grateful towards you. That is not monetary. Although if you do want to support us monetarily, guess what, y'all? We've got a Patreon. If you want to give us money, if you're feeling particularly generous, you want the double episode links, you want the patron-only content, you want the patron-only Discord, you want to listen to Too Hot for Broadcast because, man, Cillian Murphy sounds like a Too Hot for Broadcast episode. You can do that by supporting us on Patreon. The link for that in the description. That's going to do it for this episode of World Build with us. Remember that we love you very much. We're going to get through this together. Until next week.